Some climate change processes take just a few years to evolve, while others, such as ice cap melting, may take centuries. All nations will have to adapt to future climate change, and some of them won't be able to cope fully with the problems. The impacts of climate change vary widely according to local conditions. For temperature increases of 1 to 3.5 degrees Celsius, the impacts will mostly be positive in some places and mostly negative in others. The negative impacts are worst in tropical, subtropical and polar regions, whilst positive impacts are more common in temperate regions. At about 2.5 to 3.5 degrees Celsius, though, it's very likely that all regions will experience more negative than positive impacts. At about 4.5 degrees Celsius, the global economic cost could be anything from 1 to 5% of global gross domestic product, with larger percentages in developing countries. Net benefits mostly occur in wealthy countries. These countries can often afford the adaptation needed. However, poor countries will need financial aid to do this. Between 75 and 250 million people are projected to be affected by increased water shortages by 2020. The yield of rain-fed crops could be halved in some African countries, and water shortages will trigger further climate changes. By the end of the 21st century, large populations living in low-lying coastal areas risk being severely affected by further rises in sea levels. Less fresh water is projected to be available in Central, South, East and Southeast Asia. Heavily populated megadeltas will be at greatest risk due to increased flooding. The pressure on natural resources and the environment due to the rapid growth of cities, industries and economies is also projected to increase due to climate change. In sites with rich wildlife and vegetation, such as the Great Barrier Reef and the Queensland wet tropics, significant loss of biodiversity is projected to occur by 2020. By 2030, water security problems are expected to be aggravated in southern and eastern Australia, and in Northland and some eastern regions of New Zealand. In Europe, increased risk of inland flash floods, coastal flooding and erosion are among the negative impacts. Mountain areas face glacial retreat. In southern Europe, high temperatures and drought are projected to reduce water availability, hydropower production, summer tourism and crop productivity. By the middle of this century, the tropical forest in eastern Amazonia is projected to be gradually replaced by savanna. In other words, less trees and more grass, because of higher temperatures and less moisture in the soil. Melting glaciers can cause water scarcity, and the productivity of some important crops and livestock is projected to decline. Cities in North America that currently experience heat waves are expected to face an increased number, intensity and duration of them during the century, with possible negative health effects. Whilst coastal communities and habitats will be increasingly stressed by the impacts of climate change. In the Arctic, climate change is happening faster than anywhere else. Melting of sea ice, glaciers and ice caps will have negative effects on many species, including migrating birds, seals, polar bears and other mammals. Traditional ways of life will also be affected. The rise of sea levels is expected to aggravate the effects of flooding, storm surges, erosion and other coastal hazards. This will threaten the livelihood of people living there because their settlements and infrastructure will be hit. Some damage can't be repaired. Once a species or a coral reef is extinct, it can't be brought back. Once a desert is formed, it's very difficult to make the land blossom again. The climate system triggers further changes which can reinforce the impacts of global warming. Examples include the change of the Earth's surface colors, the melting of ice caps, changed sea currents, the acidification of oceans, the release of methane from thawing tundra, and heat and drought in the rainforest. Science informs us. It doesn't tell us what to do. Now, it's your job as a global citizen to discuss how to deal with the changing climate.